Tyreek Hill is week to week, according to the Chiefs, with his sternoclavicular joint injury, and Patrick Mahomes was wearing some extra support on his left ankle on Wednesday at Chiefs practice. This is Sports Beat KC, the Kansas City Star sports podcast, sponsored by Big O Tires. I'm your host, Blair Kerkhoff. Injury updates made the news today, and you'll hear from Mahomes, who downplays the ankle sprain he suffered in the season opener at Jacksonville. Also, you'll hear from Kellis Robinett, who covers Kansas State. The Wildcats are off to an impressive start and face their biggest test to date, a trip to Mississippi State on Saturday for an 11 a.m. kick on ESPN. We'll talk about K-State's fortunes in recent big non-conference games. Hey, and before I forget, tomorrow's show will originate as a Facebook Live from Big O Tires in Kansas City at 700 Northwest Inglewood Road off 169 Highway around 9:30 in the morning. If you're getting your tires rotated tomorrow, come by and see us, and if not, catch us on the Red Zone Extra Facebook page. Today is September 11th, and it was 18 years ago that the United States was the target of 4 coordinated terrorist attacks. Let me recommend the column by the Star's Vahe Gregorian about the role sports played in helping heal a nation. The link to that story and others discussed in today's and every episode can be found in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
What they're doing in the end zone really doesn't matter. This is what matters, is why is he limping on that left leg?
Patrick Mahomes limping.
The most discussed ankle sprain in Kansas City sports history? It just might be. Patrick Mahomes suffered the sprain to his left ankle in Sunday's victory at Jacksonville, and everyone wants the update. Here it is, straight from Mahomes.
It's feeling better every single day. That's the biggest thing. I mean, that first day after was a little sore, but since then the swelling's gone down and I'm able to move around a little bit better. So I'm excited about getting on the practice field and being able to go out there and still get all the reps that I would usually get.
Any different feeling than a common ankle injury?
No, I mean, if you've played sports, you've had ankle injuries before, and so right when it happened, I knew what it was. But I was glad I was able to get back out there and finish the game, and excited about the progress I've had so far.
You took some pretty good hits in that game last week. You feel like you might have been able to avoid some of that? Had you been maybe a little more mobile? Yeah,
maybe at the end there, but I mean, that's a good D-line regardless. I mean, even before that, they were moving around, they're flying around, and they have guys that can go at every single position on that D-line, and they rotate well. I thought the O-line did a good job with the heat and everything they had, with all the stuff they were bringing, but I mean, that was a good D-line, and I was excited that we were still able to have success as an offense.
At the portion of practice that was open to the media, Mahomes wore a wrap on his left ankle. We don't get to see more than stretching and light jogging on those occasions. You know, it's funny, plenty of things happened on the play where the injury occurred in the second quarter. The Chiefs faced a 3rd and goal from the 7 when Mahomes dropped back and the pocket collapsed. He was attempting to scramble out of trouble but was hit and fumbled. Tackle Eric Fisher alertly fell on the ball, and also on the play, there was that skirmish in the end zone. Meanwhile, Mahomes got up and was helped to the sideline. Reserve quarterback Matt Moore, who had just signed 2 weeks ago to replace Chad Henne as the backup, was starting to warm up. But Mahomes returned immediately and kept the offense humming as the Chiefs rolled up 40 points against a top-notch defense in their stadium on a sweltering afternoon. Mahomes' production dropped in the second half, but he was hardly going to keep up a pace that saw him throw for 211 yards in the first quarter, the second most in a first quarter in a game in NFL history, by the way. Only Peyton Manning had more, and he threw for 313 in the first half. The Chiefs leaned more heavily on the running game, especially LaShawn McCoy in the second half to put things away. So for Mahomes and the Chiefs, it's on to week 2 and the Oakland Raiders. Let's hear more from the Chiefs quarterback on a multitude of topics, from the performances of McCoy and Watkins to the Raiders' victory over the Broncos on Monday night, and playing on the same field as his father, the former Major League Baseball player whose teams played against the Oakland A's. And let's hear what he thinks about seeing himself in so many commercials. And after we hear from Mahomes, and before we take a break, check out what linebacker Anthony Hitchens had to say about why the Chiefs didn't wilt in the fourth quarter of the game in Jacksonville that was played in oppressively hot weather.
I haven't really noticed that, but yeah, I think it was just he hit it whenever he got in there. I thought Damien did a good job as well, catch the ball in the backfield, running the ball. But that's how we have as an offense, is whoever gets the opportunity, they're going to make the plays no matter who's in there. Yeah, I think it's Sammy's going to do his job regardless of if Tyreek's there or not. I mean, he's going to go out there, play hard. He's going to go out there, execute whatever Coach Reed asks him to do. And I think having Cole and D-Rob and these guys that have worked hard all training camp, having them kind of get into that role and be able to do some of that stuff as well will help out the whole team. And, I mean, that's how we've always been, is when you get your opportunity to go out there and make plays. I think just the training camp and OTAs and stuff that we had in general, Coach Reed rotates those guys. G. Luz does a good job of rotating those guys. I mean, we run a lot of reps at practice, so guys are getting reps no matter who's there. And so even last week with the heat and everything that we had, we made sure to rotate the guys and get them reps, and so that's why whenever Tyree did go out in the game, they were able to transition easy, and we could still utilize the whole game plan, and we didn't have to worry about what we could and couldn't use. Yeah, I got to the first half on Monday night, but I fell asleep at halftime. But I watched the film, and I mean, those guys are playing with a ton of energy. All those young guys that they had last year have really elevated their game. And the guys they brought in, they're playing with a ton of confidence. And so they're going to be a great test for us. They do a lot of different coverages, a lot of different blitzes. And so for us, it's going to be an early test that we're going to have to go out there and have a good game plan for. Yeah, I feel like I can still throw the ball well. The only thing that really was different maybe was some of the scrambles that you're accustomed to seeing me do. I was more in the pocket, but I feel like during the whole game, I kind of was like that anyways. So maybe there might have been a time or two where I might have scrambled out instead of getting tackled or dumping it to the flat. But other than that, I felt like I was pretty good with where I was at.
You've been to Oakland. You know how crazy the fans can be. It's the last visit there. So are there any good things you remember about going there as an opponent?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an awesome atmosphere. I mean, you know that, especially with the rivalry and everything, the history that the Chiefs and Raiders have. But it's going to be cool to get out on that field. I'll get to say I played on the exact field my dad played on at one point, and so it'll be cool to have that experience and hopefully come out with a win. Yeah, I'll have the dirt and everything. I've played short sometimes, so I'll be able to hopefully keep my feet there.
You have any memories of the couple times you've been there, of the bus rides in? The Raiders fans can be a little saucy. Any memories of things they've said or done in the bus rides or down there by the Black Hole?
Yeah, they're definitely proud of where they're from and who they're representing. So I mean, it's always good when you have those games. You're able to kind of go in there and you know that it's kind of us against the world type of mentality whenever you're on that field and you're in that stadium. But I'm sure we'll have a few Chiefs fans there as well. Yeah, I mean it's really cool when you think about it and when we talk about it. But I mean it's still just playing the sports that we loved, and it's just worked out that way where we got to play on the same exact field.
How hard is it to play on an infield, like you drop back to pass and maybe scrambling or something compared to just natural grass or vertical?
Well, I haven't got to actually do it yet, so I mean I know it's going to be different. I've seen how other teams have attacked it, but until you kind of get out there, we'll kind of go with the flow till then.
Probably the last one you ever see.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think that's the last one that they have, and this is supposed to be the last year. So, I mean, it could be the last time that we get to play on something like that, but it'll be a great experience to have. Yeah, I just try to make progress each and every week. I think that's the biggest thing with me is to keep getting better. I mean, there's still so much for me to learn. I want to make sure that I can kind of dissect defenses before the snap and during the snap and just get us into the best play possible. And I feel like last week I did a good job of just kind of getting the ball out of my hands and letting the guys make plays and not trying to force anything whenever it's not there. And so I'm going to keep trying to get better at that and keep trying to attack downfield as well. Yeah, I mean, I was sitting in there and making throws. I mean, when you play, you're going to get hit. My job is to stand in there and make those throws into those windows. And so for me, I'm going to trust in the O-line that they're gonna protect me and stay there and make those throws whenever they're there. I thought I did a good job of moving the flat defender. But I don't think I necessarily needed to go full no look. I could have maybe looked after because I got him inside and he was trying to get to the place I wanted to throw the ball. It's just maybe right before I threw the ball, just kind of give him at least a glance to see how he kind of came out of his route. Yeah, it's still surreal. I mean, it's still kind of weird, I guess you would say. Whenever I'm just talking to my girlfriend and I hear my voice in the background, but it's a cool deal, and it's kind of all of those commercials seem that they came out all at the same time. But it's cool to see yourself in that place on TV.
Any new ones coming?
I don't think so for a while at least. So hopefully we can kind of keep it where it's at for a little while, and then maybe some will come out a little bit later in the year.
Yeah, there's probably one or two plays, out of the 58 to 60 plays we had that I was like, okay, I'm a little tired, and that was long drives. But throughout the game, I wasn't tired at all. We do 12, 15 play sets here. I mean, in the heat. So at the time it sucks, but when you're playing in the season, you thinking Coach Reed, and a lot of our guys weren't retired. So, that fourth quarter came, we was playing like it was, the first snap. And you could see that effect on other teams. Not to say they didn't condition or not like that. It just we just went to work. First day of training camp, we run 15 half gassers and then come to practice. So a lot of teams are not doing that. I got a lot of buddies in the league. They're not doing that. So, and it paid off. And hopefully it just keep paying off.
Let's take a break here, and when we come back, Kellis Robinett joins us to talk about Kansas State's big game against Mississippi State in Starkville on Saturday.
Save big on the biggest brand tires. Where else? You're participating Big O Tires. Now through September 22nd, get up to $70 off select sets of Michelin and BF Goodrich brand tires. Plus, get up to an additional $120 in mail-in rebates on qualifying purchases using your Big O Tires credit card. Only at Big O Tires, the team you trust. Not valid with other offers. Disposal fees extra. Up to 10% shop fee based on non-discounted retail price. Not to exceed $35 where permitted. For the store nearest you, go to bigotires.com.
Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/sportsbeatkc offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Kellis Robinett covers Kansas State for the Wichita Eagle and Kansas City Star, and he joins us now. Kellis, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Blair. It's another beautiful day in Manhattan.
The Little Apple. It's always beautiful there. So, hey, the Wildcats have a big one coming up at Mississippi State. It's their marquee non-conference game. They play one almost every year, and that's a night. It wasn't always that way in the Bill Snyder era, especially back in the 90s. There were droughts of years when the Wildcats would not play a marquee non-conference opponent. That kind of changed in the 2000s, especially with some neutral site games. I remember the Wildcats playing Iowa and California at Arrowhead Stadium. Had a series with Southern Cal at a home and away, which was really exciting. And but in the second part of the Bill Snyder campaign and now under Chris Kleiman, the Wildcats' non-conference schedules are pretty built out, I guess, aren't they? Through the next few years, and there's talk of some other games that maybe some neutral site games for the Wildcats. What do we know about who K-State might be playing in the next few years that might have more than just regional appeal?
Well, it's funny you should ask. I actually just went and requested every single contract that Kansas State has with future non-conference opponents. So I could tell you every single one if you wanted to.
How about that? How about let's limit to the Power Fives?
Okay. The big ones are obviously they've got a game Stanford coming up that they'll either play at home or they might move it to Arlington or Kansas City. And I think they're leaning toward Arlington right now if they do move it. They got Vanderbilt next year. They've got...
Let's stop there because both of those opponents, Stanford and Vanderbilt, Vandy would come to Manhattan, I believe, right? Because that game 2 years ago was at Vandy. And then the Stanford game was at Stanford back in 2016. So it would be Kansas State would wear the home uniforms if that got moved to Arrowhead or to Arlington.
Right. As it stands right now, they'll play Vanderbilt at home next year and Stanford at home in 2021. And obviously they could move Stanford, but two cool home games, unique opportunities wherever they play them. And then beyond that, they've got a home and home with Missouri. They've got a home and home with Washington State. They have a home and home with Colorado. And they actually just added a guarantee game that actually looks kind of cool. It's against Army, I think, in 2025.
Oh, that is very cool.
Maybe not so cool based on how well Army has played lately.
Especially was it last weekend against Michigan? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, maybe by then they'll have cooled off, but
right.
But that's certainly something to look forward to.
Absolutely. Well, and I also like the idea of playing the old Big 12 opponents, Mizzou and Colorado. I'm holding out hope for a series with Nebraska at some point down the road. I've talked to some Nebraska folks about it, and they're open to the idea of playing the old Big 8, Big 12 opponents. I don't think they're interested very much in the Texas schools, but their old Big 8 schools they are. But Nebraska's schedules, I know, are set pretty much for several years now. It may be a while before we'd ever see anything like a K-State Nebraska, although they do seem to play in other sports.
Yeah, well, and I know their athletic director has said he'd like to schedule K-State or Kansas or Iowa State, some teams like that if he could. Just kind of the trouble now is, like you said, schools are scheduling so far out. Even when you do schedule them, it's something that's going to happen a decade from now, so it's not the most exciting news ever. I think Nebraska could be a cool opponent, here in 5 or 6 years, something like that. Another team I left off, they also have a home-and-home with Rutgers, but that's pretty far out as well.
Okay, let's see if we can talk Gene Taylor into trading Rutgers for Nebraska. Same
that would be
same conference.
That would be pretty fun.
Yeah, same.
They
could
even play it at Arrowhead. Now
that would be something. We know that Missouri is coming to Arrowhead next year to play Arkansas, and like you said, there's still an outside possibility of Kansas State playing Stanford at Arrowhead. Although I agree with you from what I've heard that game, if it's not played in Manhattan, it is likely to be played in Arlington. But either way, these games are good for college football. They spice up the September schedule. In the Big 12, I don't know if this is true every year, but certainly almost every year, the Big 12 programs get their non-conference games out of the way and before conference play starts, and I like that as well. So it's almost like you got a month to get in your 3 non-conference games. K-State's going to do their 3 in 3 weeks, and it's going to be a high-profile game against Mississippi State in Starkville with, is it ESPN or ESPN2 doing this one?
It's on big ol' ESPN, the flagship.
There we go. How about that? That's fantastic. A lot of good exposure for the Wildcats. Before we look ahead to Saturday's game, let's take a quick glance back at what happened last weekend. And based on the score, looked like at least a lot of people thought that Bowling Green wouldn't be as difficult an opponent as Nicholls State was in the opener, and the score suggests that. But I got to tell you, Kellis, I can't tell the difference between the first couple of games because Kansas State just rolled in both of them. And they did exactly what a program like Kansas State is expected to do when it faces overmatched opponents, I should say, and took care of business is the sports cliche that I'm looking for. Chris Klieman had to be pretty happy with what he saw on Saturday.
He did. I've kind of joked with people. There's not a whole lot to complain about. Really, the biggest complaint is almost that it came too easily. The defense has only been on the field for 85 plays through 2 games. There were times last year where they were on the field for more than that in single Big 12 games. So it's just kind of crazy how easily the offense has dominated, how little the defense has had to do, and how, I guess, just nearly flawless they've looked in 2 weeks. It's kind of the funniest thing to me about all this is if you look at Jeff Sagarin's ratings, Kansas State, based up pretty much exclusively on their huge margin of victories here, has shot up to number 25 in that poll, which shows how good they're playing. But they've also beaten Nicholls and Bowling Green so bad that they've just tumbled way down. It's kind of funny. Kansas State at this point, I think, according to Sagarin, has played the 177th hardest schedule in the country. So they've kind of hurt themselves in that regard. They've won so easily that they've made their opponents just look that bad. So everyone's really looking forward to this game this week so that we can finally see, okay, are they this good against real opponents, or is it kind of a mirage what we've seen so far?
Okay, well, I didn't know whether to call this game the Kylan Hill Bowl or the Isaiah Zuber Bowl. I think you can take your choice here. Right? The teams are familiar with each other, and after having played in Manhattan a year ago, and I can remember watching that game thinking, wow, this I couldn't believe how physically superior Mississippi State seemed in that game, and they certainly the score indicated a one-sided affair, but it was. You were there, you covered it, and of course Kylan Hill, the running back, was just terrific in that game. What do you remember about that afternoon and the way Mississippi State dominated?
Well, I remember just feeling like Mississippi State was bigger at basically every single position than Kansas State, and they actually some Kansas State players on the team who were from the South took a picture with some Mississippi State guys they knew growing up after the game. It was kind of comical to see the difference. It was like receivers with linemen, but the receivers were like 5'8", and the linemen were almost 7 feet tall. It was just kind of comical, like, wow, no wonder Mississippi State won by 21 points. But yeah, I just remember it being a really physical contest. They didn't do anything all that special. They played great defense, but on offense, it was basically just QB keeper or, some kind of handoff to Hill. And Kansas State couldn't stop it. It was really simple. It shouldn't have been that difficult to stop, but Mississippi State ran it to perfection. It kind of reminded me of Kansas State back when they had Colin Klein and John Hubert. They could just ground and pound and win with their rushing attack. So it's got to cause, some, I don't want to quite say nightmares, but some bad feelings for players knowing that they have to go up against Kylan Hill again. But I think this team also has a lot of swagger now. New swagger, and Mississippi State's lost enough on defense that I think they're going to this game feeling quite a bit different. I know the spread's 7.5 for Mississippi State, deservedly so, but I think most K-State players probably go into this thinking that they can win it.
One of the reasons that it raised my eyebrows was, as we talked about earlier, K-State plays a game against a high-profile non-conference opponent, and to give Kansas State credit and Bill Snyder credit, he went out and found some really, good programs to play. He had a home-and-home with UCLA, with Miami, with played Auburn, and Stanford, and Kansas State didn't win all of those games. They swept the Hurricanes, I remember, and split with UCLA, but they always matched up okay. You didn't feel like there was a physically superior opponent that the Wildcats were going against. I didn't feel that way until last year in that Mississippi State game. It did look like wow, these guys, where did they come from? Is the SEC really grow them that big in that part of the country? But no, it would be I think it would be an encouraging sign if we saw Kansas State just match up physically better this year than they did last year.
Yeah, and the funny thing about both their last two regular season SEC games was that they went and lost to Vanderbilt, which, raised a lot of red flags. But even then, you thought, okay, Vanderbilt was playing at home. Their defense looked pretty good. Maybe they're better than we thought. And the next week they go out and I think they got blanked by Alabama, like 66-0 or something.
That's
and
right.
All of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. Maybe it wasn't just the SEC thing that was it. Maybe Kansas State's got a lot of work left to do. And kind of same thing last year, as much better as Mississippi State looked than Kansas State, they turned around and lost to Kentucky a week or two later. And same thing, Kansas State fans were sweating over those results. So you're right. The Mississippi State game was really the only one where you thought, boy, that wasn't very close. The Miami games they won. Auburn, they really should have won. If Tyler Lockett catches a TD pass or they make some field goals, they probably win that game. Stanford, I think that was Jesse Ertz's first complete game as a starting quarterback, so you could kind of write that off as a game that didn't go their way. But yeah, Mississippi State last year was the first one that made you really say, boy, that was a mismatch.
Maybe it won't be that way this year. So Kellis Robinett will be there in Starkville covering the game for the Kansas City Star and Wichita Eagle. Kellis, appreciate you spending some time with us.
Yeah, you bet, Blair.
And that'll do it for today's Sports Beat KC episode. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review us. If you say nice things, that can help us gain a bigger audience. Listen, I would never ask you to do something that's not in your heart. So if you don't want to rate and review us, don't, but do, and be nice. Also, did you know the Star had its own YouTube channel? It does. If you type in Kansas City Star in the YouTube search field, well, the first thing you get is Roger Miller's song, Kansas City Star. Kansas City Star, that's what I are. And then there's some yodeling. But our channel's next, and you can access SportsBeat KC and so much more content there. Thanks to Kathy Liu for producing today's show, and Leah Becerra. She'll take her thanks and donations to her GoFundMe page for an Apple 11 phone. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of SportsBeat KC. You know, it's funny, isn't it?